Local school districts are feeling the pinch when it comes to making ends meet these days. And it's not just dollar figures being thrown around. We're talking about decisions that affect your kids. Fox Toledo's Sean Haggerty continues his special report on school funding now. He's here with a look at how local school districts deal with the problem.
We keep hearing it. Cuts, cuts, cuts. And just about every district is doing that. We even have seen some go as far as talking to the voters for help, and the voters have said no. So how do our local districts deal with a shrinking pot and growing needs?
We do a very good job educationally. The state recognizes us for that. But then when you step in and say you need to do this and we're not providing you money to do it, I think that's wrong.
First stop, Perrysburg Schools. The district is certainly feeling the pinch of a deficit, which has resulted in some layoffs. Superintendent Tom Hostler says with so much riding on local property taxes, funding can change pretty quickly.
One of the difficulties with what we do is it's one of the few areas where voters can go to the polls and vote down taxes. People complain about high taxes. Taxes are often, the big ones. We don't have a vote on them. When Washington decides to change, the income tax, we don't vote on that.
And speaking of elections, Toledo public school voters have already said no to additional taxes this year.
At some point, we've got to determine that educators are here to teach kids and to educate, and not to get into the political fray of running levies and campaigning.
Superintendent John Foley says funding from the state can be just as tricky to predict.
We're often told run it like a business, but there's no business that I know of that every 2 years has to wait for the legislature to determine what our funding level is and then come back and say, okay, now run it like a business, here's your 2-year model.
We're going to finish in Rossford, a district without a deficit. Superintendent Dr. Susan Lang says cuts every year have eased the district through these tough times.
Same thing you do in your own home budget. You have to cut costs. You have to say what are priorities and what are investments that we have to make for students.
From her view, much more can't be expected from the state anytime soon.
The problem is Ohio is in such a deficit right now that in order to make this happen, where's the money going to come from?
So when asked about fixing the funding problems, lots of issues complicate the answer.
The first thing that has never been addressed is what is the cost of a quality education.
We really have to look at serving our students with higher ratios, student-to-teacher population.
If we were to hire a grounds crew just to do our lawns, we still have to pay into the retirement system for those folks, even though they're a private contractor. So it really creates a situation where maybe we're not able to do what we need to do.
So after all of our research, we haven't found anybody who has the perfect solution. As for some cost-cutting measures, some ideas have their good and their bad. For example, consolidating school districts. That would cut down on administrators. But you would have higher costs for busing kids if they have to go even farther to their schools. Reporting on Special Assignment, Sean Haggerty, Fox Toledo News.